Hello again, everyone. It's great seeing you again, and thanks for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show. How's this weather graphic? We've got a winter storm warning here for Kotzebue and Selawik on up the northwest coast, Kivalina. There, Red Dog, Shishmaref on the north side of the Seward Peninsula there. That's for heavy snow and blowing snow. Looking for anywhere from up to 6 additional inches to fall tonight with the winds gusting 30 miles an hour. And that'll create visibilities less than half a mile at times in areas there. And this is out until 6 a.m. Monday morning. And by contrast, here we've got a winter weather advisory for about identical conditions here for the Teller, Wales area there, Bering Strait coast, and St. Lawrence Island, except we had 30-mile-an-hour winds here in the forecast. There's 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts here, expecting visibilities to be reduced to half a mile or less at times as well. And difference is less snowfall, looking at 4 inches here, so that made the difference between this being a warning, expecting 6 inches, and this just a winter weather advisory, only 4 inches expected. And moving on, otherwise, no watches, warnings, or advisories anywhere over central southern Alaska, Arctic coast, even the Panhandle and the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Looking good, no watches, warnings, or advisories. And satellite imagery showing moisture flowing eastward from the west here, upper level wind flow obviously from west to east, and surges of moisture coming all eastward. We've got one coming through here with areas of light snow, slowly tapering off over the eastern interior, and Nome picking up 2 to 4 inches today in the last 12 hours, ending at 3 p.m. this afternoon there. And by contrast, that's one of the heavier amounts. Otherwise, places like Kaltag and Kotzebue, about half an inch of snow there. And flurries or very light snow showers or nothing at all everywhere else, just kind of varying amounts or mostly cloudy skies in other areas. South here, southern Alaska, clear skies, Kodiak Island, clear skies here across southern Alaska, south central Alaska back to the west, and a system here south of the Aleutians with high pressure in between. This system coming up over the top of the ridge, and then this one down on the south side. That kicking the winds up, gusts 40, 50 miles an hour from Nikolsky over toward Atka. Rainfall having a tough time getting up. The bulk of the moisture, the cloud producing, or the rain producing clouds here south of the Aleutians, mostly this area here, but some clouds getting up into the area there. Otherwise, nice day for the Alaska Peninsula, and we had a system dropping southeastward here off the coast of the Panhandle, and that brought a fair amount of moisture. Over an inch of rain fell in a 12-hour period today, ending at 3 p.m. here for Metlakatla. Ketchikan, about 2/3 of an inch of rain. Then that really tapers off in the same time period as you head north. Cake, by contrast, about 2/10 of an inch. It's already ended there, and skies becoming partly sunny in the clearing. More clearing and windier conditions as you go north. Lynn Canal now getting winds gusting out of the north up to 50 miles an hour at Eldred Rock. And drier conditions, a little bit cooler temperatures as well coming down on those northerly winds. That trend's going to continue here this evening with the rain and showers rapidly shutting off, being replaced by the drier and windier conditions coming in from the north as that system drops off to the southeast. Otherwise, looks like a lot of clear skies out here over the Gulf of Alaska back in toward Kodiak Island. And a few skiffs of clouds here skirting the eastern North Gulf Coast areas, but no snow showers at all, although winds did come up a little bit in some areas. Valdez saw gusts, up to about 50 miles an hour earlier today out of the northeast, so channeled winds definitely did pick up with Tok there north of the mountains having gusts to about 30 miles an hour this afternoon. Fairbanks seeing westerlies 20, 25 miles an hour in gusts, and breezy conditions here across the central interior of the 20 to maybe 30 mile an hour range. Other areas seeing less wind than that. And Kodiak Island right on the edge of the gradient here with a high pressure and over the southeast Bering Sea. That gusts to about 45 miles an hour. Those appear to be already starting to come down a little bit and will continue to do so tonight and tomorrow, but it's going to stay clear and dry with a strong high pressure. 1,047 millibars there near the Pribilofs or just east of the Pribilofs. Dominating the weather that's ridging northeastward here, and that's going to keep this moisture either heading eastward or directing it northeast, and that's going to slide over the top of that surface high, so that really kind of dampens it out, and just mostly clouds. Some lingering light snow today over here diminishing, and all the snow winter weather advisories have ended there. And here's that low center, already the center south of, or east of Dixon entrance, east of the Queen Charlotte, southeast of Dixon entrance, but continuing to rain here, southern southeast coast, but ending from north to south. Much drier conditions about to move in. And out to the west, that frontal boundary well south of the Aleutian. Enough for gradient here, winds kicking up 35, gusts 45 miles an hour, as I mentioned, mostly from Nikolsky over to Atka, about 30, 35 at Adak, and neither station's reporting any rain. That's some just to your south there that may move up to, well, definitely will move up tonight. That's going to make a pretty good move to the north here, coming up the west side of this strong ridge of high pressure that's shifting eastward slowly here. A couple of centers here now. The main one over Bristol Bay. Again, with this high to the south, that keeps this moisture up to the north, heading east-northeastward. Still some snow showers, mostly cloudy skies through the central interior. Periods of light snow up to the northwest there. Could be some blowing, drifting snow up along the western Arctic coast, even the Brooks Range there, but nothing of a blizzard variety, it looks like at this point. Clearing out St. Lawrence Island, as well as the Bering Strait. Could see some clearing, a little breezy, but not too bad on the winds, and rain surging northward here with warmer conditions. Looks pretty wet for the western Aleutians as well, but dry for the Fox Islands. Kodiak, still a little breezy, slowly diminishing winds and slowly diminishing gap outflow winds for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. More wind, though, continuing to increase. Could see gusts 65, maybe 70 miles an hour in those windier island areas of the central northern panhandle. Lighter winds to the south, but drying out and losing the clouds there. And moving on for the Monday forecast, sunny, much lighter on the winds here in the northern panhandle. Coming down throughout the day, still some channeled gusty winds, but looks like the windier area sustained-wise will be over the south, but not as strong as what they'll have tonight here in the north. But winds kind of lingering over the southern areas longer than in the north. Sunshine here, southern Alaska. Then you get into some variable clouds, Susitna Valley, northern Copper River Basin. All the snow here north of the Alaska Range along this weak Arctic boundary here. Periods of light snow, possible snow showers. Again, westerly flow coming over the top of this really kind of insurges the moisture passing on by. Snow showers up toward the Brooks Range and eastern Arctic coast, chance of some light snow with light winds. And this area of moisture continues to spread northward here with the warmer conditions. And that should get north of St. Matthew Island. Again, freezing levels actually getting north of St. Lawrence Island by early tomorrow morning, early Monday morning. I think 2,000 feet on the north side of St. Lawrence Island. And then the main low center, though, staying back to the south, so that doesn't bode well for this front to maintain much strength, either as far as intensity of precipitation or velocity of the wind speeds. And for the outlook on Tuesday, that whole frontal boundary goes to pieces. Surges of moisture come in, leftover moisture, again, making a little bit better headway. You can see the high pressure area now is really weakened. Here, just a weak ridge left over the southwest interior, Bristol Bay, the other center, off right over the panhandle. Of course, that means light winds, maximum sunshine, and warmer afternoon temperatures there. Also sunshine, warmer here in the afternoon for Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast, Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula. Start picking up the clouds, northern Susitna Valley. Mostly cloudy, chance of rain or snow showers coming in across southern Kuskokwim Valley to Iliamna and the western Alaska Range. And then rain, a little more widespread with a little bit stronger trough here swinging in across the Alaska Peninsula. Wind not a factor at all with this system, just increase in the rainfall. And another one behind that with a main low center, although it's not too strong. And again, winds, no problem out over the Bering Sea or the Aleutians. Another Arctic front drops down into the northern interior with possible blowing snow on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Lows tonight, single numbers to maybe a shade below zero over the eastern interior. 5 to 15 below. Eastern Brooks Range all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast, above zero on the west side, 20s here along the west coast, and lower 30 or mid 20s to upper 30s on the Panhandle, warmest in the south. Highs tomorrow, 30s here in the western interior, single numbers, Arctic Village, but not too bad for the Arctic coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving into flying weather, we've got pretty good area of IFR here, western Aleutians, up into the west central Bering Sea, well west of the Pribilofs yet, and just south of the central Aleutians. Good VFR, eastern Bering Sea here, Alaska Peninsula, all across southern Alaska, especially east and south of the Alaska Range here. Some areas of VFR up the east side, and then IFR from Fairbanks on down toward Minchumina, and then back to the northwest in across the southern Koyukuk, and then across the Kobuk Valley on up into the northwest coast. More IFR, North Slope Arctic coast, VFR, Gulf of Alaska, and all of the Panhandle. That continues through Monday afternoon. Good VFR now across southern Alaska for Monday afternoon into Bristol Bay in the southeast Bering. Marginal VFR, though, advancing eastward across the Pribilofs, and mostly IFR, central Aleutian, central Bering Sea, and extends right on up into the Bering Strait, and probably includes Nome, as well as Teller and Wales, as well as the northwest coast on down here into the northwest interior, and another band up across the north slope to the eastern Arctic coast. And again, nothing but VFR for the Gulf of Alaska and the Panhandle. That holds through Tuesday morning as well, but another influx of moisture here brings more marginal VFR. Some areas of IFR scattered around to the interior. More solid IFR there from the central Arctic coast. They're on down south through the Bering Strait into the Bering Sea here. Pribilofs now in the IFR zone. IFR central Aleutians out to about Kiska Island and Unmak Island, IFR, and Alaska Island marginal. Western Alaska Peninsula marginal. Bristol Bay, they're staying VFR. Got some IFR showing up along the western slopes of the western Alaska Range here, Kuskokwim Valley, staying VFR, Kenai Peninsula. And then for the afternoon, stays VFR, that moisture having a tough time getting east of the mountains here, with the exception of the Susitna Valley, becoming marginal. Possible IFR, western Susitna Valley, IFR Kuskokwim Valley, on out to the west. You can see widespread IFR areas of, be a more accurate description here in the west and the Bering Sea. Northeastward, real narrow band out toward Dead Horse, Kaktovik, and those areas. Areas of IFR possible, mostly kind of a marginal kind of day or afternoon showing up here for the eastern interior, central eastern interior. Narrow band IFR here showing up in the Gulf of Alaska, eastern Gulf, marginal just barely reaching the coastline. So the Panhandle, another VFR afternoon, except from about Elephant Cove to maybe Yakutat. Passes Anaktuvik, IFR improving to marginal. Probably lowest conditions also will be in the morning hours for Adigan, IFR becoming marginal. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, both passes there. And rainy starting out marginal but becoming VFR, not too bad there. And windy, IFR becoming marginal, but just south of the pass there'll be VFR. And for the Isabel Pass, IFR improving to marginal. Mentasta, possible marginal VFR early on, then becoming VFR. Tanita, wide open VFR. Saline usability is unlimited for Portage and Chilkoot and White. Freezing levels 2,000 feet, southern Panhandle, otherwise at the surface off the coast here. And then a rebound in warm air surging northward here over the central eastern Bering Sea, 2,000 feet up past the Bering Strait, 4,000 feet north of St. Lawrence Island, and 6,000 feet north of St. Matthew Island, with 8,000 feet to almost 10,000 feet around Adak. And for icing, with that surge of warm air coming up, areas of light to isolated moderate rime icing here. Bering Sea, central Bering Sea, maybe possible a little more moderate stuff there in the Adak-Atka area. And then moisture up here over the north and northeast could be isolated areas of moderate Reimer mixed icing, but mostly of the lighter variety. Icing free, southern Alaska and the Panhandle. Jet stream here showing the low slowly tracking southeastward here, but far enough to the southeast, weak enough that you're going to be in the northeast dry wind flow for the Panhandle. Good westerly jet here into the Seward Peninsula, about 130 knots over the top of that ridge. 15 to 25 knot winds out of the west through the interior, northwest 15 to 20, southeast coast. Pretty light for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, 10 to 15 knots, and that's about it. Same thing at 3,000 feet here, 10 to 20 knots for the Aleutians, all coming up over the top of this ridge. Westerlies 20 to 25 here in the central interior, lighter either side of that. 5 to 10 the Panhandle. Could be some moderate chop here, central interior, back down along the Yukon Delta coast.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us today is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thank you for joining us, Eric.
My pleasure, Dave.
Thank you. And you're joining us here to talk a little bit more about satellites and how satellites work, and especially one neat feature that's working over Alaska right now. What is that?
Well, there's a lot of weather satellites and a lot of instruments on these satellites, and there are new generations going up and new instruments. This includes something called the Day-Night Band, which is not a cover band at the local bar, but it's a new satellite that is very useful, especially here in Alaska, especially in the winter.
In the wintertime, yeah, that makes it a little bit hard to use some of the normal tools that we associate with weather satellite imagery.
Right. You know, one of the classic weather satellite instruments is just visible light. What would the human eye see? If you were riding on a weather satellite yourself and looked down, and it was black and white, you'd see the clouds reflecting the sunlight. And we've got an example from the Pacific Ocean. There's a geostationary satellite, and we can see that the eastern side of the image is in daylight. The western side, it's night over there, so you don't see anything because there's no sunlight over there. And visible imagery, it's very intuitive. You see the clouds just like you see them standing on the ground, but now you're a satellite seeing them from above. But the problem is, what about the night side of the planet? How do you track the storms? How do you know where the rain is, the snow, the weather, if you can't see the clouds? And that's why, just like a television can change from one channel to another, or radio can change stations, satellites can change the frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum that they're looking at. We can go to infrared instead of visible light. You know, it's heat energy. You can see heat, and we've got another satellite picture from the same time, same satellite, out over the Pacific Ocean. That's the infrared side, and we're seeing temperature there. And even at night, when there's no light, everything still has a temperature.
So we're sensing something with a thermometer instead of perhaps the visible side of that, is what you're saying?
That's right. On this depiction, colder features are lighter shades, warmer features are dark. And so clouds tend to be colder than the ground. Clouds are higher in the atmosphere, it's cooler. And so that very same image on the western or the left-hand side of the globe, now we can see the clouds there, even though it's nighttime, because we're seeing the temperatures. And one nice feature is that tropical storm there, just in the middle of the northern hemisphere there, hurricane or typhoon,
That's
depending
that
on
swirly part that we see in the middle of the image?
There you go. You can even see the eye on it there, especially in the infrared image. So we've got two kinds of imagery there from the same satellite, different instruments, you know, different channels like on a television, visible and infrared. You know, it turns out there's no one magic tool. Each has its strengths, each has its flaws, weaknesses. The visible is nice, it's intuitive, it's easy to understand, but doesn't work at night. Infrared is nice, it works at night, you can see temperatures, but there is a catch. What if your clouds and the nearby bare ground or open water, what if those were about the same temperature?
Oh, that's going to be hard to figure out what's going on.
If you can only see temperature and you have two features that are the same temperature, they will look the same. You won't be able to tell. They're camouflaged. This happens, especially, it can happen around Alaska, especially over the ocean when you have low clouds that are the same temperature as the open water.
It happens quite a bit in Alaska.
We have an example. Now, this is from a different geostationary satellite. It's down over the Atlantic Ocean. Look in the South Atlantic. In infrared, we've highlighted in a yellow circle there. There's some patches of clouds, but it looks like there's a clear area in the middle of that image.
Sure.
That's the infrared look. But let's take a look at the visible channel, and we can see there's a stripe of clouds across the middle of that circle that is only visible in the visible.
Okay, right.
The trick here is that those are low clouds of about the same temperature as the surrounding ocean. So from an infrared point of view, where you're seeing temperature, the clouds in the water nearby are the same temperature, they look the same. It's only on the visible that you can see what stands out as the actual imagery.
Okay.
Two tools, each have their strengths and weaknesses. Can we combine them? That's where the day-night band comes in.
Okay.
It's a super sensitive visible sensor that can actually see by moonlight. It can even see the aurora.
Wow.
And in Alaska, we have long winter nights. We can use that day-night band. Here's an example from that storm that blew the Kullik drilling platform ashore near Kodiak Island in December back in 2012. This image is right near when that storm happened, and it's in the middle of the night in December.
But this looks like visible imagery.
Looks like daytime imagery. It's amazing. That sensor can take any little bit of moonlight and just make the most of it. And we can see so much detail. Even in the northern part of the image there, you can see some aurora up there. The northern lights
That's that band that goes across the Arctic slope?
You got it. That's the northern lights. We're seeing black and white image here, so you don't get the green or the purple colors there. But that is the aurora. There's another example of the day-night band, and this is from January of 2013. It's about 4 in the morning, and this is a snapshot from Weather Service software. And we can even see in the middle of the image, there's the lights of Fairbanks and North Pole over to Eielson Air Force Base. Anchorage and Matsu lights, city lights, are evident as well. Sure, we can see, even though it's 4 in the morning in January, there is no sunlight to be had, that just enough moonlight is available that this sensor can see that. So we're trying to solve that puzzle where visible light is good, but only during the daytime. IR is good at night, but you can't see the difference between clouds and ground sometime. The day-night band is an attempt to do the best of both with one tool. And it's brand new for Alaska here, and we're hoping to use it in the forecast process and help predict storms, weather patterns, to help get good forecasts for people.
Okay, another tool in the weather toolkit for meteorologists in Alaska and researchers worldwide. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us today. And you can learn more about Dehne and the day-night band by going to the web address that you see on your screen. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the segment today. And looking at the ice edge, really pulling back to the north here, and actually really not much change with the southerly winds. High pressure will be shifting eastward. South to north flow will continue and increase, and actually warmer air coming northward. And so the next 5 days, the ice field here will be shifting to the north. And for coastal water forecast, pretty windy. Forecast for tomorrow here for the Panhandle, especially increasing the winds down here over the southern areas, north 30-35 knots on the south coast, northeast to north 30 knots, north coast. Still holding on, at least early in the day, to a 40 knot sustained wind through Lynn Canal, and gales early on, coming down in the afternoon toward evening, both areas here. Stevens Passage, north 35, 7-foot seas, small craft advisories, Clarence Strait, north 25, and seas 5 feet. Those will become light northwest winds for Clarence Strait on Tuesday, and variable 15 actually here for the central and northern inside waters. Westerlies 15 to 20 on the south coast, variable at 10 on the north coast, light winds and seas only 5 to 6 feet. And for Prince William Sound, north winds 15 knots tomorrow, seas 3 feet. Northwest 20 to 25 knot winds for the North Gulf Coast with 7-foot seas. 30 knot winds, Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, both out in the northwest. Cook Inlet northeast 10 to 15, and seas no higher than 3 feet. Those will turn westerly, very light winds, variable to west at 10 knots, 1 to 2 foot seas, slight seas, and 15 knots out of the west for Kamishak Bay with 3-foot seas. Barren Islands, small craft advisories west 25, 7-foot seas, and then the western Arctic, or western North Gulf Coast, 20 knot winds out of the west here with 7-foot seas, variable 10 Prince William Sound, and northeast 15 for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Kodiak Island, northwest 25 knots for the east side of the islands tomorrow, seas at about 9 feet. South to southeast winds for the Alaska Peninsula, 20 knots. And Bristol Bay, southeast at 10 with 2-foot seas. Moving on to Tuesday. Westerlies here for Kodiak Island, 25 knots on the east side of the islands, 20 knots Shelikof Strait, 5 to 8-foot seas, and southwest or west-southwest winds here in the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula at 20 knots, 7 to 9-foot seas, south 15 Bristol Bay, And small craft advisories here on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula at 25 knots from the south. Western Aleutians, west of Kiska to Shimia, north 15, and then Kiska over toward Adak, southeast 20, central Aleutians, southeast 30 knots, especially for Atka Island, and that pretty uniform wind pattern all the way across the Fox Islands, southeast 30 or 25 to 30 knots, with seas running 7 to 13 feet. Outlook for Tuesday. South to southwest, or mostly southwest here for the eastern Aleutians at 25 knots, small craft advisories, and 7 to 11 foot seas. Lighter winds in store for the Adak-Atka area, south to southwest at 20. And then west-southwest, 15 knot winds here for the western Aleutians, really laying down pretty good with 7 to 8 foot seas. Southwest coast here, south 20 knots, seas running, well, 1 foot here on the Kuskokwim Delta coast. Ice covered there, of course, along the Yukon Delta coast. St. Matthew Island, south 20 knots. Southeast 25, 7-foot seas for the Pribilofs. Southwest winds 20 knots. St. Lawrence Island in across Norton Sound for brisk wind advisories there. And moving on to the forecast for Tuesday. Pribilof, southwest at 20. South 20 knots here for the Kuskokwim Delta coast. And down to 10 knots for St. Matthew Island. 15-knot winds, Yukon Delta coast, Norton Sound, and St. Lawrence Island. Not too bad. And for the Arctic coast, east side, southeast 15, central coast, light easterlies at 10, and then swinging around to west at 25 knots there for brisk wind advisories that extend all the way down to Wales. Outlook for Tuesday. Lighter winds. Now we have brisk wind advisories for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast at 25 knots from the west, west 20 here for the central and western Arctic coast, 15-knot winds from Cape Beaufort to Wales. And for tonight again, areas of surges of snow into the central interior here. Best chance and heaviest back to the northwest, but even that won't be too significant. High pressure, dry conditions, drying out over the panhandle, quite windy. Warmer conditions and rain. Central Aleutians continues to push northward, begins to shift eastward here with the high pressure moving eastward and weakening. See on Tuesday, really weakens, allowing some moisture into the southwest interior. Really not much change in the northern interior. Another Arctic front up toward the Brooks Range. Stays clear. Southeast coast, Copper River Basin to Prince William Sound.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.